Hello again, everybody. We're going to go on our fifth and final field trip for spring term class, Forest Recreation class here at SWOCC. I'm going to miss you guys, Quinn, Kevin, Reagan, Ethan, Evan. Maybe we'll meet up again some sunny day. Meantime, I'm hoping you've been following these trips and you take some of them on your own. And a quick review. First trip, we started at North Bend. We went up Larson Inlet to Trail Butte, Cedar Cabin, Elkhorn Ranch, Jerry Phillips Reserve, Beaner Logging Camp. That was the southwest corner. Second trip, we started out at Walker's Ranch, and we followed the 1930s CCC roads to Dean's Mountain, Cougar Pass, Elk Peak, and back to Trail Butte. All four peaks in one day, so we went around the perimeter. Third field trip, we came in through Scottsburg. We went over to the elk viewing area. We saw the blooming rhododendrons, Scottsburg Park, came down to Loon Lake, visited the old growth at Cougar Pass, Indian Point, had a tidewater. So we had the north and the northeast corner covered. Fourth trip, we went with Jerry Phillips. We started at the old Elkside Lumber Company and at Lakeside. We went up Benson Ridge to Divide Springs Camp. Then we visited the Gould brothers' cabin sites. Bert Gould, Clarence Gould, and George Gould Jr. at Gould's Lake, and ended up with Jerry Phillips Reserve with Jerry. This trip is the fifth and final one. We'll skirt the south and the southeast portion. This portion of the ELLIOTT doesn't have ready access. It's private land, bad roads, gates. So we'll have covered the whole ELLIOTT in these trips. We'll be starting at the old Steamboat landing at Allegany, follow the county road that was there before World War I. We'll be going to Save the Myrtle Woods, a grove that was preserved, an old logging camp, splash dams with Lionel Youst, who is the expert on the history of that area. We'll be with Roger Ott, who is the expert on steamboats and river transportation in Allegany, and we'll end up at Golden and Silver Falls, which has been a destination for recreational travelers for well over 100 years. So here's where you'll be working on the computer, Oregon website's homepage. We go to our current project, and you can see that we now have a Golden and Silver Falls page. I haven't loaded up the map on that yet, but we can also get the links by going back to the educational field trips, and we will be looking at Golden and Silver Falls, and this will be linked onto the page we're working on now, and the handout will be last year's handout, and this has maps, has links to Lionel Youst. We'll be meeting with him today. His books are linked here. History of the state parks is there, and we've got additional maps and then handouts that we visited last year. The map we'll be using is this map here. We'll be starting the Allegany Steamboat Landing, going to the mouth of Marlow Creek, visiting splash dams, an old logging camp, and Golden and Silver Falls. We're at the Steamboat Landing that the Ott family operated steamboats from at Allegany, heavy tidewater. The old landing is right below us here. This is where people loaded and unloaded the steamboats coming from Coos Bay, Marshfield at that time, and on to San Francisco and points east and west. Roger, we're here at the store, and you're telling me that this used to be a hotel. Did that have anything to do with the steamboat landing here?
Yeah, at one time, sometimes they'd come up on the boat when they're going to go on up, and they'd stay overnight at the hotel, and go on up and then catch the hotel, go back in the morning, that kind of thing.
Uh-huh. So, but there's a store here too, but it's over where the parking lot is now.
Yeah, that was the store.
Uh-huh. Was it your grandfather that ran Steamboat back and forth?
Yeah, my great-grandfather started, then my grandfather, and then my dad.
Oh, so there's 3 generations ran steamboats here.
Yeah, Dad wasn't much of the steamboat. That was kind of past when he come along, but he ran the after they went to gas and diesel.
Uh-huh. How many people would they have a day going on the steamboat here?
The Rainbow they had built in 1912, it was 65 foot long, and I think they were licensed for 75 passengers. And they built it in conjunction with the stages, you know, that went over to Scottsburg.
Uh-huh.
But
yeah. Uh-huh.
But after they only kept the Rainbow for a couple of years, there wasn't enough passengers to really make it pay, so they sold the Rainbow over to South Fork.
Then how did they? Then they ran the mail from Scottsburg to Allegany, and then they had to take the boat into Coos Bay.
No, the mail didn't go there. The mail came from Marshfield to here, and this is as far as the mail went.
Oh, it didn't go over to Scottsburg from
No,
here?
not from here. I think that went up, probably up top.
Oh, okay. So it was just a few people traveling to Scottsburg then.
Yeah.
Was there any regular freight traffic or anything?
Not really freight. Lionel can really tell you about the traffic over the hill.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
And we're going to be heading up that way and
Yeah.
talking to them about that very thing. On the steamboat then, when did your great-grandfather start running that?
It was late 1890s,
Oh, wow.
and they ran the boats here until 1948 was the last.
Wow, from 1890s to 48.
Yeah.
And did they operate with the tides, or did they
No, just
on the strict time schedule?
Time schedule.
Okay, so they didn't have to pay any attention to the tides.
No, but they'd get hung up sometimes on low water.
So, what would they haul other than passengers going to and from Marshfield? What were they hauling? Produce from the farms, or?
Yeah, milk,
Uh-huh.
mail, cattle, cars, everything.
Uh-huh. So when the Goulds lived over the hill there, and they still had the pack trail back and forth, would they haul their produce to their hides and meat and everything to here to Allegany and move from there?
Dave knows more about that than I do, but I think a lot of their produce that came here and it went to Marshfield, and then a lot of it went to San Francisco area.
All right.
You want to tell the story on this, Roger?
Yeah, they built it for the Steamboat Rainbow in 1912, but he said that Dave's granddad, Clarence, or George, did do these oak spokes.
Oh, he did?
Turned the spokes for him.
Uh-huh. So that's from 1912.
Yeah. And this face here is rosewood. And this hub, my granddad sawed that hub off because people were after him to get it, and he cut the hub off so they couldn't use it anymore. And this is rosewood here, oak spokes, and these plugs are alder.
Oh, wow. They really took a lot of care with those in the day.
Yeah, I go to these places and I've always been going to kind of refinish it, and they weren't varnished, they were kind of oiled.
Uh-huh.
And I've always been kind of going to clean the thing up and kind of refurbish it, but I just never done it.
So this is in Allegany at the steamboat landing that we were just videotaped earlier.
Yeah,
Just below the bridge.
Just right below the bridge.
Wow.
At Alert and the Rainbow.
Wow. A different world.
This was 1913, I think it says on here. 1913.
Yeah, World War I hadn't even happened yet. And you're saying that the spokes on the the stern wheeler there were
These boards here.
okay.
Color of the rainbow.
Uh-huh.
Okay,
Now the Rainbow was run by your grandfather,
great-grandfather,
great grandfather.
and my grandfather.
Wow. How long was that boat?
About 65 foot.
Wow. How many passengers could it take?
I think they said they were licensed for like 75 passengers.
Wow. So that was a major form of transport.
It was the one they built for for hauling the passengers up over the Golden and Silver Falls. And here's down go around this corner up here where the school was, they go down around the next corner down, and this is right down there. There's a mobile home up there on that corner now. But I think that's my great grandfather there. And one of the little girls is my grandmother.
Wow.
But they run a lot of excursions.
So people would just take this like for a Sunday drive or something.
Yeah. And they're, like I say, they had the Rainbow, and they also had the Millicoma. And they ran those boats a lot, and I worked a lot of times, and it was tied up and used for excursions and because it was 85 foot long.
Wow.
And they couldn't turn around everywhere in the river down here because it was too long.
Wow.
Here's the Rainbow and the Mecca down here, and at the landing, and it's frozen in the ice.
In Allegany?
Yeah, it's frozen in
Can
ice.
you
I
make that
couldn't.
bigger?
1925.
Wow. How many times is that frozen over?
Not many times. I've seen it froze over a couple of times hard enough I couldn't throw a brick out there and break it, but
All the way across the river? Oh, wow.
the water goes up and down, so it keeps breaking up at the bank. You know. And that I know that's Grandpa down there looking at his boats. Grandpa Jess. See, there's a schoolhouse up there. And that's the Mecca there. It was patterned after the Rainbow. It's 65 foot long. And it had 4 Fords and tractor engines in it.
And still haul the same number of people, 75 people?
Yeah. I don't remember how much milk and several tons of freight. My granddad Jess had that one built, and he said that was his favorite boat because he had it built like he wanted it.
Plus he had 4 motors in it.
Yeah, twin screw. They could, go ahead with one and back on the other, and it'll turn right around.
Wow. You could do a 180 in place?
Yeah, pretty much.
Jeez. From that time.
Here's what's left of the Mecca.
When was that picture taken?
Oh, about 3 or 4 years ago.
Wow. So that's an 85-year-old wreck or something.
Yeah. My great granddad's brother-in-law or somebody was backing up from the dock down there and backed right in front of the breakwater, and they got sunk her.
Did they blame him?
I don't know. It probably was kind of quiet around here for a day or two. But I always saw that picture and I think, was it people walking around with cameras in, Now everybody's got a cell phone, but you see these pictures like this, and somebody was there. There was an alert going down.
Yeah, if that happened today, they'd have it on a videotape and on the internet and Yahoo and...
This is a welcome. This is the one I rode to school on.
Oh, wow. So that's a school boat.
Well, yeah, I see the milk cans on it, and there's a mail and passengers and freight and everything.
So dairy farmers and...
Yeah. There's 10-gallon milk cans.
So did they run that when school was not running?
Yeah, it run every day, 7 days a week.
So that's what was your grandfather? You said that worked every day for years,
Yeah,
never missed a day.
7 years, yeah. And this was his boat. My dad ran it the last few years, and I learned to run it too.
So you've actually run this boat.
Yeah,
And
I can remember I was with Dad one time, and he put off the mill there below the forks of the river. He did have a deckhand with him. He said, "I'll be right back." And he came back, and he had his 5-gallon grease can. He said, "Stand on that." So I got up there. I could just see out the windows. And he said, "Now stir up the middle of the river." Boy, I thought that was really something. Okay, this is a later picture. This is probably in the 40s. This is a welcome. This one went up to Allegany up this way. The favorite went to Delwood, the South Fork, and this boat here went downriver about to where the Chandler Bridge is. It was just a school boat.
Oh, wow.
And see the kids going down here?
So they're going to school on the boat.
Yeah, I rode this boat to school my freshman year.
Wow.
From Coos River.
Wow.
That's right at the forks.
Yeah, this is the forks of Coos River. And it's the kids standing here with the milk cans to go to school.
Wow.
It's Claire Rood, Lynn Rood, and Arliss Rood there.
That's where the marijuana farm is now.
Yeah, that's where the pot farm is.
Times have changed.
Yeah.
That's Tioga Hotel there.
Tioga Hotel. There's a welcome run up here to, there's the Ivy Leaf. That little boat went up to Sumner, up Cashin Inlet.
Is that Coos Bay,
Yeah.
Marshfield at
Yeah,
the
there's
time?
the Tioga Hotel.
Oh, okay, it's still there, right?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
A lot of these pictures I show when Lionel and I were doing our talks,
Yeah.
we always said, used to say, this building here, there's some ladies lived up here in this place, and whenever a ship would come out, they'd come out here and wave at the ship. And I said, I was about 10, I said, I always thought they were sure friendly.
Ah.
This one here, taken off the dock there in Coos Bay, that's headed home. The last trip ever made. That's the last trip going home.
What what date was that?
December 28th, 1948. Look, there's Grandpa standing there talking to some people. But
Now,
this is the last day too.
was his name Ott?
Yeah,
Is he the one that lived up on Glen Creek
yeah, he lived up the falls there.
when he was a kid?
Yeah,
That's where he's.
there's Grandpa standing there with a mail bag. He was running that boat. Like I said, I'd run it a couple times for him myself. But he was about 65 years old. He was running that by himself and milking a dozen cows night and morning
Wow.
by hand.
Huh.
So he was pretty busy about that time. Okay, now he sold the boat back in about 52 and went up to Reedsport and they rebuilt her. And this is the same boat rebuilt.
Oh wow.
That's the one down to the museum.
That's at the museum now.
Huh.
So it was built in 1919, so what's left of it's 100 years old. And this is a Millicoma. This is the one that was built in 1911.
Uh-huh.
And it was I'll show you a picture of the stern wheeler, but they've taken the stern wheel off and put a propeller on it.
Uh-huh.
That's the Millicoma before they lowered the pilot house down.
Wow.
And then they changed it over, and let's see, where is it? Like that, lowered the pilot house down.
There's old stern wheeler.
They took the boiler out and they had a gas engine running the stern wheel.
Huh.
And finally they changed it over and took the stern wheel off and had a gas engine in running a propeller. So they changed them out like here. And see, they even moved the pilot house further back.
What year is that?
This car here was about 1914, I think.
Wow.
And that was when they brought your car up on the boat and then you unloaded Allegany and drove out over the falls.
What was it, your grandmother that built the hotel here, or great-grandmother?
No, I don't know who built the hotel, but my great-grandmother ran the hotel at one time.
Uh-huh, so that'd go all the way back to the 1890s as well.
Yeah,
So this used to be a bigger community at that time.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a really going concern. They had logging camps and, everything up here.
Uh-huh.
They had, they started with the Alert. The great-grandfather brought the Alert over from Coquille River
Uh-huh.
and started. And then in 1909 they had the Millicoma built. It was a steamboat, stern wheeler. It was smaller.
Uh-huh.
And then they had the Rainbow built and it was bigger, than the Millicoma.
Uh-huh.
But they always had 2 or 3 or 4 boats because of breakdowns. Sometimes you'd have to make a double run and that kind of thing. So
Uh-huh. But do they run on a daily basis, 7 days a week?
7 days a week.
Wow.
And my grandfather Jess Ott, they tell me that he went one time 7 years without a day off.
Wow.
7 days a week.
And Jess Ott grew up in Glen Creek Valley.
Yeah, up until he was, I don't know, early teenager, I guess.
Uh-huh. Roger and David, you're talking about over by the store here, there used to be a stable, and then on the hill where the church is, that used to be a zoo?
They had kind of some animals in there.
Uh-huh.
And, I guess they had an elk and different things. I have to look. My dad had quite a deal on it, but he could remember.
Uh-huh. So you got records of the animals they had up there?
I don't have records of it.
Uh-huh. But was it local animals like
Yeah,
elk
just,
in there?
just some stuff. They probably catch stuff when they were little, you know how it is, and bring it home and have a place to put it.
Was that like a commercial zoo where
No,
people paid to
no,
go in?
it's just something that,
Somebody did.
Yeah.
Who did that?
I don't know, Larson or someone.
Uh-huh. Is this the same Larson's as Larson Inlet?
No, I don't think, no.
Oh, different Larson's. Okay. So, Dave, is there anything you wanted to add to that as far as horse stable or anything?
Well, I was in the horse stable at one time when I was small, and kept horses there for the people to ride out of here.
Uh-huh.
And then cows, they milk cows and everything.
Granddad milked his cows there.
So there's kind of a commercial use of the area for visitors as well.
Yeah, and then Grandpa, when he milked cows, he furnished milk for about everybody here. They'd bring their deal down and sit on a little deal outside the window, and he'd fill the milk jugs every day. And
So the stables are more for local people and visiting and that rather than visitors from out of town or anything.
yeah, it was more of a, because it had milk cows there too.
Uh-huh.
When my granddad came down, he put some milk on, he put his horses in there while he went to town for one thing.
Uh-huh.
In later years, he had a cow, or a horse, excuse me, a car, and he used to run tours up over Golden Silver Falls.
Ah, so people have paid to go on a tour there.
Yeah, and he had a boat that he built.
You got
and
pictures
he
of
was
that.
there, and he brought people up on that also.
That's the boat they built up in,
When they built the house.
at the Elkhorn? Wow. This you take a boat to Allegany and then you take the car to
Scottsburg.
Scottsburg and then take the ferry boat across Scottsburg and then take a bus to Drain.
Yeah, I think in more stage cars to Drain.
Oh, stage car. Uh-huh. So that's the store we're at,
Yeah,
and then there's cars all lined up.
yeah, and there's the barn back there. The hotel is in behind these buildings. There's brush.
Oh, I see. So where we're parked in the parking lot there is where the barn was.
No, we're parked wherever this store was.
Was that store, the old store?
Yeah.
Okay.
The new one's over here.
Okay. Uh-huh. So are those people, they've come in by ferry and they're getting ready to go to Scottsburg?
Probably, or come from Scottsburg to go to town.
Wow.
See, they come back, the boat came up in the morning bringing passengers,
Yep.
and then went back with the milk and stuff, and then they came back up with the empty milk cans and people from town and the freight. And they met the stages, people get on, they'd take them to town, so they'd get back to town then.
Wow. Now the Mahaffey's still run produce down here. Is that in the same basic area?
No, it's just around the
They're
corner.
just
Around the corner from
yeah.
Mahaffey's.
And see, here's where the bridge is right here,
Okay. So
and they're across the river.
oh, okay. What was that big set of buildings in the back there?
There's a store and a hotel.
Oh.
There's a
Yeah,
hotel.
there's the
right there.
hotel.
That's a hotel.
And that's where we started out this morning, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And that house isn't there anymore, it's up across the road from the store. My dad was born in that house.
Well, is that where the zoo was?
Yeah,
Okay.
Born in the zoo.
Okay, so this is Allegany, and can you point out the school?
schoolhouse.
What's the house over to the right there?
That was my great grandfather's house.
Is that the zoo?
Well, that's where the thing was.
Uh-huh.
It
And
was
so
out here. It was out here.
where's the hotel where the store is
Right here.
now?
Here's the hotel.
Oh, okay.
Here's the store.
Okay.
And the barn is right over here, but you can't see it. It's just off the side.
Got it. And then over in here was where the boat landing was.
Yeah, you can't hardly see it, but you come up here and these are steps going up to school.
Oh,
My
wow.
granddad, your great granddad built some of those steps.
Huh.
Yeah, Dave's granddad built a sidewalk, wooden sidewalk from Allegany up to his place up around the corner there where that tall house is, that next place up from Allegany.
Uh-huh. The Allegany Glee Club?
Yeah.
It was like a dance hall or something?
Yeah, it's just a little, they gave him a little plot of ground. They built that. Larson donated the little place to build that. And there was one stipulation, no alcohol on the premises.
Uh-huh.
And they'd have little, I don't know, just little community doings and stuff.
Uh-huh.
And Grandpa, the dances, and Grandpa said one time they had a big old dance here all night practically, and the next morning showed up and the thing had collapsed.
Wow.
Now, see, here's the Coos River road down to the boat landing.
Uh-huh.
This is where the road is now, actually.
That is that the old store?
Yeah.
When did that when did that go?
Probably in the 70s.
So I've probably seen it before then. Huh.
Had two gas pumps. The old gas pump had one of them where they'd pump it up into the glass, and then gravity in the car.
Yeah.
Then if they got electricity, then they put in a regular one.
Uh-huh. We're here at the mouth of Marlow Creek with Roger and David, and we think the hill behind us is perhaps the site of an old shell midden. But Roger, you were talking about a carved rock that they had in this neighborhood here.
Just up there where warehouses road turns off.
Uh-huh.
There was a rock so big, and I remember had, like I said, we used to think they were hieroglyphics, but I don't know whether things are scratched in there or what. But they got buried when they built the road.
Was anybody living here year-round? Marlow? Is this where he was from?
This place here, the Lumberg place over there, story about it is that an Indian owned that.
Uh-huh.
And this guy wanted to buy it from him. And well, he'd sell it, but he wanted a lot of money for it.
Yeah.
So the guy went down and he bought, I don't know, can't remember, $15, $20 worth of quarters and dimes and nickels and stuff in a big bag and give it to him, and everybody was happy. It was a lot of money.
Wow.
That's the story, and it's in the book. The fishermen, from here on is about tidewater, and up in Marlow Creek, as you go up and just above where the dealer camp was, that's where they used to spear fish. It was a good spot.
So Diener?
No, that's Marlow Creek.
Oh, okay.
It was about half a mile up Marlow Creek from there.
But where the old Diener logging camp was?
Just past that, yeah.
Uh-huh. So, and the tidewater goes up into there too?
No, the tidewater stops here.
Oh, it stops here, but that's where they speared.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay. Lionel, we're here at the Myrtlewood Grove, and would you like to tell us how this got preserved and what condition it was in when they did it?
Well, it goes back to the Save the Redwoods League down in California, where the, different people with lots of money bought up these wonderful groves of redwoods along the highway to save the redwoods, so that people in future generations could see the old growth. And so that kind of caught on here in Southwestern Oregon with a group of women who thought they ought to save the myrtle woods because they were kind of beautiful too. And so they bought up a bunch of groves. There's one up on the road to Powers, and there's this one and several others. I don't know where they all are, but they bought these up to save the myrtle woods. Well, the myrtle woods, of course, they kept growing, and there wasn't much danger of losing myrtle woods. You can't already kill them. You can see that stump over there if you wanted to show it over. That great big stump. See, that was a big myrtle wood, and they just got too old and fell down, and so that's what's happened. This isn't the grove it was originally, of course. There's a big stump in the middle there, and there were a lot more trees here than there are now. But these were just saplings probably when the women bought this property, but now they're old growth myrtle wood.
When was that? They created this about 1950, didn't it?
Oh no, it was been before that. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah, I think so.
So there used to be more trees, and they were bigger.
Well, they bought it because it was an especially prominent grove. I mean, it was particularly impressive, and at the time that they bought it, and it's still a nice grove. And so it became a county park, and then Weyerhaeuser owned the park next to it, the Nasika Park, and so then over time the county merged them, and
so this is now part of Nasika Park?
This is all part of Nasika now, yeah.
Oh, okay. We visited that on the tours before, but we never really stopped here just at the grove.
Yeah, this is just a camping site, and the Nasika is a campsite. This is a picnic site, day site, and Nasika is a camping site over there.
Is there any indication or any stories that Native Americans use this site?
None that I know of, no.
Okay.
No, I no.
So it's mostly the Save the Myrtlewood people?
It was the Save the Myrtlewood.
Do you know about what year that was?
Well, I think they started probably certainly in the 40s.
Oh, 1940s.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, 'cause I can remember hearing about it at home. My mother was involved in things that women were involved in.
So your mom was involved in
Well, I don't know that she was in this, but she was involved with women who were involved in it at least. I think Mrs. Cutlup, I remember, she was a Keep Oregon Green was the thing.
Yep.
She was one of the big movers and shakers on that, and I think she also was involved in this.
Well, that's the same time. Keep Oregon Green is about 1940, 41.
Yeah,
so.
I think this was, I always associated it at the same time. It may not have been, but I think of it.
It was the same people, it sounds like.
I think it was, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Same kind of people.
Can
Trying
you,
to save the darn stuff.
can you think of anything that happened here, or anything in particular? Do the local people visit here often, or is it just kind of a roadside attraction type of thing?
No, after the county got it and they put up, they put in really nice picnic tables. You see, they're all gone now, but yeah, people come up. There's one over here. People, you know, a nice place to have a picnic. Yeah, we had picnics there. We just lived around the corner.
Okay, so local people used it too as well.
Yeah, sure.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, sure.
There's a motor boat already.
Yeah.
Bob was real good black over here, so
Yeah.
that's
Okay.
1949.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we
Yeah.
should go over and get the plaque.
Focus in on that burl there. That's what the Myrtlewood collectors want, that burl, because it makes a beautiful grain for your salad bowls. And
My grandmother had a few of those.
yeah.
Okay.
And
So Hodgins Creek, you said?
Hodges.
Okay.
And that's where Coos River Lumber Company, when it was old C.A. Smith Lumber Company, that was one of their camps was there, and it was a big camp, Camp 3, I think, before they ever moved down to southern Oregon.
So they were just quarter mile from here?
Oh, less than that, yeah, just up around the corner. Yeah.
So there's a big lumber company here.
It's just directly across from the SWOCC Park. Just directly across is where Hodges Creek comes in. Weyerhaeuser has their road on the other side, and it has a big culvert there now. But it was in there on that creek is where it was one of the big camps of C.A. Smith Lumber Company.
Well, when did C.A. Smith have it?
They had it certainly from 1907. That's when the mill started, and I think the camp was. They had several camps around the bay during the first few years, and this was one up.
Is that what Nasika Park is part of that old complex?
No, it was on the other side of the river.
Okay, so Nasika Park is after Weyerhaeuser got it then.
Yeah, Weyerhaeuser. Yeah.
Anyway, my grandfather, Clarence Gould, he had a splash dam right here, and he logged up Hodges Creek also for CA Lumber Company. He had 3 steam donkeys that he leased from them, and he'd have to take them back when the bank loaned them back, and he was back and forth. He splashed logs. There used to be logs stored out here in the river at one time.
Wow.
I've got photos of that.
But that's before they put in the reserve here.
Not long before, 1907.
Oh, 1907. That's when your grandfather was working here. Wow.
No, he was probably Jippo and for the
C.A.
for
Smith.
C.A. Smith.
Lionel, can you tell us when the dam was in here, and you were talking about people with PVs that were releasing the dam when you drive by here.
Okay. Well, this was when Clarence Dick had the franchise for splashing logs on the river. This was the last dam before he got to Allegany, and then he had 3 or 4 more dams further up the river. He'd release the first one, and it'd come down, and the water come up on the second dam. They'd release it, then they come down, and water come up on the third dam, and they release it. Then here, the water comes up on it, then they release it. So they got all the water impounded from actually 4 dams usually.
Wow.
As enough water to carry those logs all the way to Allegany, which is about 7 or 8 miles. And the tide water at Allegany.
Wow.
So, and they would like when the water's up like this, they might splash a couple times in a week even.
Wow.
Just how when the dams are full and they got enough logs to make it worthwhile, they just trip. It didn't cost anything; it was all free. But the franchise belonged to Clarence Dick, and so he got so much $1,000 for every log that went down because he had the franchise. And when I went to the 2nd grade in school, Clarence Dick had a camp just down around the corner here on the right. There's a big flat
By the Lockhart Bridge there?
Yeah, just beyond it. And there's a flat place on the upper side of the road. And he had a camp there. It wasn't too long, but while I was in the 2nd grade, that camp was there. And,
Now, you said they release this 3 or 4 times a week. How would they get enough logs built up in just 2 or 3 times,
well,
2 or 3 days like
they
that?
wouldn't get very much, but if they had the water, they just let it go, and that many more. And so they're logging into when I worked for him up here, I worked for when Cape Arago had the logging here, and still Clarence Dick had the franchise on the dam. But there was a dam up above where we were logging, and we were tightlining logs down into the river, just into the bedrock. And when they got enough water, yeah, that first dam would go, and then that water would come in. There'd be a coal deck there and that water would back up behind that coal deck, and pretty soon the logs would start shifting around and start moving, and then they get down into the impoundment for the next dam, and then they release it. And by the time they got here, they had quite a little bit of water to push those logs all the way to tidewater.
So they didn't have to have a whole lot of logs necessarily. They just had to have the water.
They had to have the water, and whatever logs were there would go. Yeah.
As long as they had enough chance of jamming up.
Yeah. If they had too many logs, they had a lot of problems with log jams further down different places. Sometimes you'd be driving along here, and they'd be down here with a Coos King donkey, breaking up a jam. In fact, right at Nasika, I remember one big jam they had there at Nasika Park one time.
Now this is where the old tavern is.
Yeah, right there, you see it.
So the river, when you and Lionel were growing up, this is a normal view on the river. Lots and lots and lots of logs.
They run about 4 or 5 of those rods a day.
Wow. So there wasn't any rocks or falls or fishing or anything. It was just logs. So
Now here's down the river here, where I was along 2 rafts.
would they build rafts when they took them out of the splash dam, or do they just run them down
No,
just straight?
this wasn't splash dam. This was
This was
But
dump-
I mean, did they when they used the splash dams, did they
No,
build
they-
rafts
no,
or
no, they
or
just
just straight
splashed
logs?
They had a deadhead or something down, a cable or something catching down in the lower bay and up the bay.
Oh,
And then
okay.
In later years, they caught them here at Allegany and rafted them.
Oh, but they would raft them then.
Yeah.
Okay. So either way.
Yeah, but used to be the splash would go to the bay, I think.
The warehouse was dumping right in the water right here by Allegany and building their rafts right there, dumping into them and then
Here's
taking them down.
There's a couple of rafts going around there, and you see the boat up here.
People much younger than me don't remember log rafts.
Those are big logs too.
Yeah.
Lionel, we're at the mouth of Glen Creek where it enters into the East Fork of the Millicoma, and you were talking about the logging camp that used to be here, and also the homesteader that was here before then.
Yeah. Okay. Well, W.W.R. Glenn, for whom Glen Creek is named, was a old state of Mainer. He was in the Civil War in the Union Navy in the Civil War. He came out here, I believe, with Simpson Lumber Company from Maine, and was a boat builder. And anyhow, he homesteaded here early on, and he had his 160 acres, and there are 440s in a square. Most of these homesteads up here are 440s in a string along the river, or along the creek, so they go a whole mile along the creek. 440s, however the creek turned, that's where the 40s were. But Glenn's homestead was square. There was 240s and 240s. And it took all that nice flat land over on the other side of the East Fork, and all this nice. It was really a nice place, besides being the forks of the river. And he sold that to H.R. Bunch in 1891, and he bought from Bunch the property that we stood on at my place when you first stopped there.
Yep.
Okay, that was W.W.R. Glenn. That's where he retired.
Oh.
And he lived there from 1891 until 1901. And then he died, and he didn't have any will or anything, and he had, and that property remained in an unsettled estate for 50 years before they could clear the title.
Wow.
And Alvin Rozier bought it, and then I bought it from him. So I'm connected to W.W.R. Glenn a little bit.
When Glenn worked with Simpson, what year did he homestead this thing?
He homesteaded this in the 80s. Yeah.
Did they have a road from Allegany up to here?
Just a trail, a pack trail.
There's a pack trail at that time.
Yeah.
Now you said afterwards they put in a logging camp here.
Okay, well that was way later.
Okay.
Because this sold and resold, and had different people lived on the farming kind of land here. In 1935, Brady and Neal came in here to log the oh darn, it starts with a W, the lumber company from St. Paul, Minnesota.
You're not talking about warehouses.
No. Oh, doggone, I've just blanked out. I was thinking about it on the way up here. Anyhow, they owned all of the timberland. Weyerhaeuser owns it now.
Yep.
All this on Glen Creek, all this going up Schoolhouse Creek with all the Weatherford.
Oh, Weatherford.
Yeah,
okay.
Weatherford Lumber Company from St. Paul, Minnesota. And so they the sawmill where the Coos History Museum is now.
Yep.
On the north side of that, they're building a mall or something like that.
Yep.
There used to be a sawmill there. It was called the Martinez Mill, and that belonged to the Weatherford Lumber Company. And that's where these logs went. And it burned in 1940. That mill did. And Brady and Neal continued to work here until early in 1941. They finished up. And we lived above the falls at that time.
Yeah.
And so we moved down here. And Roy Neal, there was partners, Roy Neal and Brady, I can't remember, Jim Brady, I think. Roy Neal's house was right where those big trees are right now. It was right there. And we moved into that house.
Oh, you lived there?
And we lived there when I was in second grade the whole year, yeah.
Wow.
And so this camp was all here. All the buildings were here. The commissary was right there in that corner. The truck garage was over on this side. And beyond the truck garage, they had a ramp where they could drive the trucks on that ramp and they'd get underneath and grease them. And then beyond that was a log dump with a logging on this. It was the first outfit on the Coos River, as far as I know, that logged with logging trucks.
That was going to be my question.
I'm pretty sure they were the first one. I don't know if anybody else that used logging trucks before Brady and Neal in 1935.
Wow.
But the logging trucks on this side dumped their logs over here, and the logging trucks on this side came off of Schoolhouse Creek, and their dump was over on this side.
So Schoolhouse Creek has to be named after a schoolhouse.
There was a schoolhouse there for the Glen Creek School, and it closed in 1925. And
that's not the one you went to, though.
I went to the one above the falls, which was a kind of a subset of it. It was called it was called the Golden Falls School.
Oh, okay.
And the Golden Falls School was a part of District 45, which was the Allegany School District. And this was also, once they made it, originally each school had its own district. And then they consolidated, and so District 45 took the West Fork, and they took this one and the one above the falls. And then they closed them one at a time. It was declining participation. They had there was only two of us at the end of the one above the falls.
Yeah, we got that picture of you in the book.
Yeah.
I think you're in the first or second grade at that
I
time.
was in the first grade, and Pat Wilkinson was in the second grade. But anyhow, so this was Brady and Neal was here from 1935 till 1941, and so the layout, just to give you an idea.
Yeah.
Besides on this side,
Yep.
then this was a log bridge. On the right was the cookhouse,
Okay.
where everybody ate, and when we lived here, they had dances in there and stuff.
Oh wow.
But and then beyond the cookhouse was the toilets. They were pretty companionable. You know, they had about 10 holes.
Yeah.
And they all went right in down to the river, because when the dam was closed, of course, the water was all impounded, and this all impounded water. So when they splashed the dam, that flushed the toilet.
Wow. so you'd have
They
six.
needed all the water they could get. They needed all the water they could get.
Yeah, right. Well, if there wasn't any water, when the dam was open and there wasn't any water, or like in the summer, the dam might be open for a month or more because might be closed, but no water.
So
But
a 10-man outhouse.
Pretty much. I don't know how many. There's a lot of them. There's plenty of room there to be companionable, and so that was on that side. Then next beyond the toilet was the log dump. Okay. And on this side, you had Roy Neal's house here.
Yep.
Brady's house was behind it back there. And then this was a plank road.
Okay.
Okay, and on the left side was all the bunkhouses, the 4-man bunkhouses, and they all faced the road all the way along there, a whole string of them.
Wow.
And then behind that was the filer's shed. It was always nice because it had a skylight in it, see, so the filer could see what he was doing. And the blacksmith shop. They still had some of the equipment was in there, and then there was houses that left over from other people who had lived here in the past, and people who worked for the Brady and Neal lived in those. Then they had moved out, so they were vacant. And there were other shacks that were built just for family. You know, somebody comes up with a wife, they needed a shack of their own, and so they had them kind of different places. And then in 1941, we moved down here in the summer of 1941. We hadn't much more than moved here, and here come the Arkies in. And that was an interesting thing. The Grapes of Wrath, they're coming in with their Model A trucks and bed springs and mattresses, and
What was bringing them here?
the Dust Bowl.
Well, they were sent out from the Dust Bowl, but why did they come to here?
Aha, good question. Excellent question. Well, one of them was already here. Ray Henderson had been here 1937.
His friend was here.
Huh?
His Ray's friend was here.
Okay.
And then he called back. He got a hold of his wife back in Arkansas and asked if she would talk to Ray and Irene because there was work out here. And so they talked it over and let her know the next day. And he and his wife talked it over and decided, well, they'd take a chance to come out. And they sold their horses and gave away all their canned stuff and said they had an old car with had curtains on the side. It was open. So he traded off and got a car with curtains on the side. So they brought, it was Irene and Ray and Imogene, and Evelyn was 3 years old. And this guy's wife and little girl, and they loaded up their stuff, and here they come.
Was that in 37? Or
37, yeah.
Okay, so he'd been here pretty well established, and other people he knew or relatives were coming out during the Grapes of Wrath days. Okay, and they ended up in Lodi, California, picking grapes and starving to death. They couldn't pick enough grapes to feed themselves. And one of them came up here to visit, and to visit Ray. And they found this whole camp here with empty houses. And Dad had a sawmill up there, and he couldn't get men to work in it. Come on up. So here come the Gosneys and the Amoses and Hicks. And several families of them, and they all turned out to be solid citizens. Let me tell you, they all stayed, they all did well, and they were a solid contribution to our.
Are they still relatives?
They're still here. They're still here.
And this was their gathering place.
They found empty houses and they just moved into them.
And went to work for your dad.
Some of them did, and then the war came. The draft was already on, and the ones who were young enough for the draft got into that, and like both of the Gosney kids, they were both in the Army, and they all went in the service, the younger ones did, but the rest of them stayed. Ray Henderson stayed, and they worked for my dad. When they came back after the war, they worked for him again.
Wow.
And when I was a kid, I remember coming home from with the folks, and I was in the back seat of the car, and we come up here, and all these lights in these places had all been empty, we moved there, and suddenly people living in them, and there's kerosene lamps in all these places. I remember I said, well, we're coming into Little Rock. My folks got an awful kick out of that.
So this became known as Little Rock, at least
well,
in your family.
Well, it did to me.
I asked Evelyn, I said, when you was growing up, I said, do you ever get a hard time about being an Archie out here? And she said, none of us had anything, we were all in the same boat.
Well, they got them here and they came to the land of plenty, let me tell you. There was fish in the river, and there was deer in the woods, and elk, and there was work up on the hill, and houses to live in, and it was pretty upscale compared to Arkansas.
Lionel, you grew up above the falls here, and your mom used to come down the county road. Can you tell us a little bit about the history of the county road?
Well, I can start with this property right here, which was the homestead of George Schaefer's when the Schaefer brothers homesteaded this Upper Glen Creek. And in 1911, George sold that to the Waterford. I said Weatherford before, but that's wrong. It's Waterford. Waterford Lumber Company. And Waterford Lumber Company bought this from George Schaefer's, and they bought land all the way down Glen Creek. That's what Brady Neals was logging, was Waterford Lumber Company timber. And this timber they never logged. It was too far up and too hard to get to, I suppose. And they ended up donating it to the state for a park. And so Golden Falls, all of Golden Falls was inside the homesteads. So all of this here, to homestead this, he had to be certified it was agricultural land. So you can see the agricultural land that we're in, standing in there. So Silver Falls, the boundary line was just short, didn't include the Silver Falls. And so Weyerhaeuser, there's an extra 11 acres that Weyerhaeuser in the 1950s, Weyerhaeuser donated that to the state so that so Silver Falls would technically also be inside the park. And then they put a great big plaque up there that read as though Weyerhaeuser had donated the whole thing to the state, which they hadn't done. Waterford Lumber Company donated the thing to the state, and Weyerhaeuser just donated that little bit that nobody was using anyhow. And and they had that big plaque, and that plaque was there for 1 year, and then that next winter, a great big slide came down. That thing must be under 40 feet of dirt, right? That flag got rid of that. Nobody knows about it but me.
Well, you wrote it in your book.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so this road was built in, about that time, 1911, yeah. And they blasted out the cliff road above the Golden Falls. It was quite, before that, they had to go up in the pack trail. It was awful. I don't know how I don't even know what the route was.
I was going to do, I didn't know.
They probably walked along the ledge, didn't they?
Huh?
Probably used the ledge to walk on.
We need to lay down.
No, they had to go around. No, they couldn't go across there. There was no ledge.
So the ledge was what the Swedes put in there.
Yeah, that's right. They blasted that out. They quarried it from the top down to the level of the road. Yeah.
So there's no way to know how they were packing back and forth.
Well, there would be if there's anybody around who remembered, but I don't know.
I don't know if they went up this way or whether they went
I don't either. I never did know how you got in there before that road was there. But nobody went any other way after that. Once the road was in there, that's the only way anybody went.
I never thought to ask for that one.
Yeah. You don't ask and it's too late. Yeah. When now that timber was on the property up there, on both properties, on the Tyberg place and on the Wilkinson place. So there's 260 acre homesteads there that have 160 acres of timber, because it wasn't the river, the bottom land isn't very wide.
Yeah.
It's a mile long, but it's 2 miles long, but it's only 200 yards wide. But all the rest of it's timberland. But they couldn't get rid of that timber because it was nobody could get it out of there. And at that time, my dad was looking for timber because he had a sawmill. He'd brought the sawmill down from Washington State. He'd been in the sawmill business from 1920s, and then the mill burned in 1938 at Hauser, and so they saved the logging equipment. So he's logging over at McKinley for an outfit, and then he kept looking for timber for sale, and by golly, the Wilkinson place, oh my gosh,
Is it Clee?
Joe, yeah, it was Clee, but yeah, Joe Schaefer's had died, and he willed that ranch to the two boys, Clee and Bob, and he willed $500 apiece to the two girls, those his stepkids. But there wasn't any money, and they owed back taxes on the property, and so how are they going to settle this estate? And what possible chance of money would be to sell that timber. Well, Dad went up and looked at it, and everybody else had looked at it, said there's no way you can get it out of there. And so he looked at it and he said, no, I can get it out of there. So he set a mill up there, and so we were there from early 1940 until 1945 before he finished.
Oh, wow.
And before he was finished, then Vic Dimmick bought the timber on the Tybert place, and so he moved his mill up there too. So they had 2 sawmills that run up there for the last year, and he was there all during the war, and so it was hard to get men during the war, and so my mother drove the lumber truck there, one of the truck drivers. Two trips a day out of there all through the war, you know.
Wow, down through here and all the way
through
down
here.
to Allegany.
Yeah,
Go
so
to town, Coos Bay.
all the way.
Oh, the road was all the way into Coos Bay at that time?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It was 1928 when they opened the road from Allegany.
Yeah, I had to go across the ferry.
Had to cross the ferry.
Yeah, the ferry. The ferry. The state owned the ferry, and they had a limit. 400 board feet of lumber is all they allowed to go on the ferry with, and so all these loads had 4,000 feet. 24-foot lumber.
Wow.
And
So your mom would
with a
be
full
driving
trailer.
from Glen Creek Valley, crossing the bridge there in Silver Falls, down this road here all the way to
All the
Coos
way-
Bay, and she had to take a ferry, and she'd
Had
sometimes make 2 trips in one day.
She made 2 trips a day, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, she'd start in the morning, she'd park the truck at the house there where you stopped and picked me up.
Yep.
Park the truck right there.
Yeah.
And then she'd cook supper and everything, and in the morning, get us kids off to school, then she'd go in with that load, and then she'd come back and get the second load and bring it in, and then back and pick up the load that she would park at the house.
Wow.
So, and that was every day. She did that every day.
Wow.
And there was no
Where was the lumber going to?
well, it was going to different places because Al Pierce bought lumber. Irwin and Lyons bought lumber. The Cape Arago out at Empire bought lumber. It'd be on
Whoever's buying.
just whoever's buying, and he'd just take orders, you know, and for whatever it was. An awful lot of it went to the Navy, to the Seabees. It was all war stuff. It was all government contracts, and so the big mills would get the contracts with the Seabees or with the Navy, and then they would they would jippo it out to the other, because they'd take bigger orders than they could handle. Like Irwin Lyons would take a massive big order, and then he had several jippos that were working with him, and Al Pierce did the same thing.
Wow.
So anyhow, the lumber might go any one of the number. I know an awful lot of it went to the Al Pierce dock there at Coos Bay Lumber Company.
Roger, you want to tell about what was your grandmother or great-grandmother?
Great-grandmother.
That lived up above the falls there? Why'd they move there, and how'd they make a living?
She sold a little cream and pigs and whatever, you know. They came there and had to clear the land because it was trees, big trees.
Yeah.
And they cut them down and burn the brush and dig out the stumps and burn them. And I remember folks telling me that Grandma said that at night sometimes she'd go out and build fires around, those bonfires.
Yeah.
And she could sit in the house there and look out, and she kind of think there's people out there, you know.
Yeah.
It's lonely. Because the 2 boys, when they got up to, I don't know, about 10, 11 years old, they boarded out and worked.
Oh,
Down
wow.
at Allegany on farm and stuff.
So she was up there by herself?
Yeah, by herself a lot.
Wow.
And right below Allegany there, Granddad was working on the place there. He was just a kid, and he was a good worker. And there was another kid worked for this guy named Blaine.
Yeah.
And Grandma was lonesome, and so she sent down one time and said she needed help on the place for a few days.
Yeah.
And so would send Jess home.
Yeah.
Well, Grandpa was a better worker than the other kid. Blaine sent the other kid up to help her.
What happened to her husband? What happened to...
Oh, that was quite a story too. His first husband was James Pasteur Ock. And he came out from Arkansas, and he was quite older than she was. And my aunt wrote about it and said that probably she married him back there because she was young and she had 5 brothers, and she was taking care of them because cooking for them and washing their clothes and all that stuff, and probably thought a good way to get away from them. And so they came out to drain, and pretty soon the brothers all showed up too. So, but Grandpa told me one time that he was born in Drain in 1886.
Is that Jess?
Yes, yeah. and his brother was 4 years older. But he told me one time that he'd never seen his dad.
Huh.
And she was downtown one day in the store, and Grandma said, "That's your dad over there."
Well, did you get divorced from him, or?
Yeah, and he finally went back to Missouri, I guess.
Uh-huh.
And then she married Tyberg. Here, after she had the place, he was a logger.
Yep.
And he married him.
Uh-huh. But then she's up there by herself. What happened to Tyberg?
He finally died too. I don't remember. He died 30,
Huh.
in the late 30s, I guess.
Yeah, he died before she did.
Yeah.
And she died in 39, I believe.
Yep.
At the same time, they all died about the same time. Yeah, 39.
So that ended the whole Glen Creek Valley community pretty much.
Jared and Charlie were still there. Roger's great uncles. They were there when we lived up there. I remember them very well. And of course, Clee Wilkinson and his family. He had. He married a widow that had 4 kids. And 2 girls and 2 boys.
Wow.
And so they were raised up there. And, so, yeah.
What was, now, there's old growth here. What kind of logs were they logging? Was that second growth? Or
It was mostly for the mill. There was some old growth, but the mill, he wasn't set up to handle the great big logs. So it'd be second growth. But they're good sized logs. They would be certainly 48 inches.
Oh, okay.
Okay. They call it old growth now, I suppose. But
Well, Mahaffey in her book says that it was all old growth up through here, and somebody described it as the most beautiful place outside the redwoods, or most beautiful place on earth. That there's all old growth through here. Was that?
Well, it was true, and it still is. You know,
There's a few cabins old growth around.
you bet there is. You walk up that trail,
Yep.
and you walk. It's one of the few places you can do that.
Yep.
Really is a beautiful sight.
Yeah, that's one of the things we want to get on the video there.
And every year we lose 2 or 3 of them. That's to the point that we're tipping over. Yeah, they only last so long.
Grandma bought a Model T. One time they shipped it up on the boat to Allegany, and Granddad and his brother Sam, they brought her up and they drove it up to the ranch up here, and they told her to practice during the week, and they'd be back next weekend and give her another driving lesson. So they said, not long about Wednesday, here she is, shows up down to Allegany at the store.
Wow.
And she said that she got so she could drive through the gate, so she'd see the reason not to go to town.
Yeah, it scared everybody off the road.
Yeah, Dad said she's a terrible driver.
She had to be pretty good to live through this.
Yeah.
But one year she and her brother drove clear to Pendleton and went to Pendleton Roundup in Model T.
Wow.
Well, they drove it down to California too, to their World Fair.
Yeah.
They went to the World Fair in San Francisco. Yeah, I don't know. That was the Terraplane, probably.
Probably the
Yeah.
Terraplane. But she used to. I can remember I was about 6 years old, and she'd make butter and bring down to. Our house was burned down. We lived in the Grandma and Grandpa Jess, and she'd bring this little butter down. That was mine. It went on table every meal. That was my butter. Nobody else could have it.
You know, Alice Wilkinson told about her. She had see, when you're selling cream, you just go in once a week. You know, you save the cream. You separate the cream every night, and then you fill it in these 5-gallon. They're not 10-gallon cans like milk cans. They're 5-gallon cans. Those cream cans. They're still pretty darn heavy. I remember Alice Wilkinson said that your great grandma, she'd take 2 of those 5-gallon cans and put them in the trunk of that Terraplane. Wow. Yeah, pick them both up out of it.
One reason I guess she got rid of old James Ott, wasn't very. She thought he was lazy, but she found out later after he left that he probably wasn't very well. And she expected him to, pull his weight more, and she probably nagged him and everything and all that.
Well, Tyberg ended up kind of bad too. He ended up with arthritis, I think, so bad he couldn't do anything.
He could turn the cream.
He sat and he could turn the cream, but it was only that they could get out of him because it was a crippling arthritis, I think.
Wow.
He was one of them that built the road over the
Yeah.
Dave, we just pretty quickly want to tell about the opening up the road here.
Okay.
Or maybe because of geology, maybe talk about the rock slide in the fill in here maybe.
But,
Okay.
coming up here about 300 yards back, there's a big bunch of boulders in the stream, and then the water comes up over that, and then you get this flat here. Well, this flat used to be a lake and filled in with sand. That was the geology part. And then the road slid out about 5 years ago, I believe. And it was the county it belongs to the county, and they didn't want to spend the money to fix it. They estimated it to be $400,000 to fix the road. And Gordon Ross, who used to be county commissioner, came to me probably a year after that and said, "Don't you think we could maybe go up and look at that and get the road so people go up there?" And I said, "Well, we'll go look." So we walked up there and looked at it, and it was an easy fix for me. So we got a hold of the county commissioners and roadmaster, and then we fixed the road. Did it at our own expense. And I think we had $6,000 into it, so they got a pretty good bargain. But
A $400,000 fix for $6,000.
yeah, we donated a lot, all of it. And then so now you can come up here. We left logs along the outside because it's narrow, so the roadmaster would approve it. And that's how we got it done. And
Are those the same log stringers that are in there
the
now?
logs are still there, yeah.
Wow.
But that's how we got and the county did a lot of the extra work, like gravel and grade it and things. We moved all the material. We moved probably 1,500 yards of material, went into the bank 6 feet and widened the road that way is what we did. But they were gonna fill it up from the bottom up with boulders, and that's where we got the 400,000. And I could see that was a farce, so we changed it. Changed it and got it. So now we can drive up here. So that's the end of that story.
Okay. Well. We're right here at the entrance of the old county road going up to Silver Creek Falls, and then back and over to Golden Falls and up into Glen Creek Valley. Here's a new footbridge to from the park up to Glen Creek Valley. On my left here is Silver Creek coming down from Silver Falls, and off to the right here, Silver Creek is entering Glen Creek and moving on down to the East Fork Millicoma and the Coos River. This area has been logged off, but there are still a few patches of old growth around, and especially on the trail here to Silver Falls. Just showing the trail on it. We're at Golden Falls. Glen Creek comes over a rock precipice right here, and the old county road goes to the top. Here we are at Glen Creek County Road at the head of Golden Falls, where Glen Creek becomes Golden Falls, and a beautiful view from this spot here.